Hello, classic rock fans. I'm reporting just a day after seeing 38 Special at the Waukesha County Fair. This is the third time I've seen 38 Special in concert. The first time was at the Washington County Fair in 2011, and the second time was just over a year ago at the UWM Panther Arena after a Milwaukee Admirals game. I posted a review of that show on this channel, so I recommend you check that out because today's video might be a little bit shorter as I don't want to go over all the same ground I covered in that first review. My main takeaway in that first review was that 38 Special is fantastic, and I had been sleeping on them for way too long. Seeing them last year made me regret skipping them several times in the years before, and last night was a reinforcement of that. They are one of the best classic rock touring bands out there today. So they are now on my do not skip ever list. If they're in my area and I can make it to that show, I am absolutely going to go see 38 Special when they come to my town because they bring it. Now, when I saw them last year, they were limited by the parameters of the set times. They played after Milwaukee Admirals game, so they only had so much time to play. And because of that, they had to do short versions of songs, and they had to cut out some songs of their typical set list. None of those problems this time. This time, I got the full 38 Special concert experience, and that was wonderful. So today, we are going to talk about a full proper 38 Special concert. And then I have some bonus video for you at the end of this review, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so the set list they played last night was very similar to what they played in 2025. It opened with Rockin' Into the Night, Wild-Eyed Southern Boys, and Back Where You Belong. Three absolutely stellar songs, three of their best, especially Back Where You Belong. That's a personal favorite. After that was The Sound of Your Voice, and then Back to Paradise, Honky Tonk Dancer, and Roughhousin'. And those last three songs, I believe they played last year, but they did like short versions. Those were the songs that had to be abbreviated because of the limited time they had on stage after the Admirals game. This time, we got the full versions of those songs, which is great. Next was a new song from the band, All I Haven't Said, and this is from their most recent album called Milestone, which they released earlier this year to celebrate their 50th anniversary as a band. And this is also their first album in like 20 years. So it was a big deal that they went back into the studio for this. I had previously listened to that single, but I haven't given the whole album a listen yet, which is to my regret, because the single's really good, and seeing them perform it live was also really good. That's a beautiful song, and it had me kicking myself for not giving the full album a proper listen. So I will be remedying that shortly for sure. Now, it was around this mid part of the set list where Don Barnes talked to the crowd for a little bit, and he thanked everybody for 50 years of support. And he said, especially during those MTV years, we'll never forget that. And I really appreciated him saying it like that, because 38 Special was one of those bands that were absolutely brought to the A-list by MTV. And unfortunately, there's a lot of his contemporaries who look back on MTV and even pop success as a whole with some regret or some embarrassment. And I've never understood that. MTV was a gateway for fans. So if a band had success in those early days of MTV, I don't know why you would be embarrassed by it. So I'm glad that Don Barnes sees it for what it is, and he celebrates it. And he appreciates that that's where a lot of the 38 Special fan base came from. After the new song, they did Teacher, Teacher, which I believe is from some 80s movie soundtrack. After that was a track called Somebody Like You, and then their ballad, Second Chance. Second Chance is one of those songs that you might not know from the title, but as soon as they started to play it, I guarantee you would recognize it, because that's one of those songs that would have been on those, Time Life collections, monster ballads or something like that. And unlike a lot of ballads from that era, Second Chance is actually really good. That's another one that is a really beautiful piece of music, which, again, coming from like a down and dirty Southern rock band, you wouldn't expect that they would have that side to them, but they absolutely do. And it's really effective. That was one of the stronger songs of the whole night, at least in my opinion. After that was Like No Other Night and another new song called So Much So Right, which, again, sounded very promising and makes me want to listen to that new album, Milestone. And then that brings us to the highlight of the whole evening, at least for me. One of the things I talked about in my review of last year's show was the addition of their new guitar player, Jerry Riggs. In the late 2010s, 38 Special needed a new guitar player. And instead of bringing in some journeyman guitar player, they went a different route and resurrected the career of somebody who was immensely talented, but for various life reasons had to step away from the music industry for almost the entire classic rock era, despite showing a lot of promise in the early days of his career. And that guy is Jerry Riggs. If you know Jerry Riggs at all, you would know him from this, the Heavy Metal soundtrack.
But there was this big movie back in the 80s. It was called Heavy Metal. It starts off with a song called Radar Rider, and it's by a group called Riggs. And we just happen to have the guy up here tonight, Jerry Riggs. He's here tonight. He's alive and kicking.
Radar Rider is one of the first songs you hear in heavy metal. So if you've seen heavy metal, you absolutely would recognize this song. It's one of the best songs on this soundtrack, which is a soundtrack full of incredible music. And I can say it's one of the best songs on that soundtrack because it was one of only, I think, 3 songs from this soundtrack that South Park used in their episode that makes fun of this movie.
Now fight for the Lochnar Trophy!
Heavy Metal is not a great movie. Heavy Metal is a fun movie, and a great deal of that fun comes from the music included on the soundtrack. So this is a song I absolutely love, and I also absolutely never expected to see live on stage because, again, for most of my years being a fan, Jerry wasn't really active as far as being a touring entity, and I wasn't even aware that he was in 38 Special until I saw them last year. Now, last year, if you saw my review, you'll remember that I lamented that I didn't get to see them play Radar Rider because that was one of the songs that had to get cut because of how limited they were with their time on stage. And thankfully, last night, I was finally able to see this song, and they crushed it. Beyond this song, 38 Special was very smart to bring him into the fold because the dude is super talented, looks great on stage. He is everything you want in a lead guitar player, and it just makes the band better. So it was a real treat to see them finally perform Radar Rider on stage. And also, Don Barnes' introduction of Radar Rider was hilarious.
So everybody get all your gummies out and everything you need. Edibles, whatever.
You know who's taking a gummy and then proceeded to watch heavy metal? So, yeah, that absolutely cracked me up, and it was the funniest part of the whole night. And it speaks to what a good frontman Don Barnes is. He doesn't talk a whole lot during the show, but everything he says is worth hearing. He expresses appreciation for fans. He tells, quick but funny stories. Like, he gets it. He knows exactly what fans want to hear from him during these shows. And even though they played a full 20-song set list, the whole show was only an hour and a half. They do not waste time up there. It's one song right after another, but nothing feels rushed. Also, a quick story about a cool little interaction I had earlier this year, thanks to a different podcast here on the Pantheon Network, and also here on the Tapin platform. Sonic Impact, which is hosted by Elliot Goldberg, had an interview scheduled with Don Barnes. And since they were doing it here on Tapin, Elliot said to anybody watching, if they wanted to ask Don a question, they could join the chat and ask Don directly, Well, I was watching the interview live, and I absolutely jumped at the chance because I think Don is a legend, and I was very curious about this whole Jerry Riggs connection. So Elliot, being the gracious host he was, brought me on to ask my question, and I got to ask Don about how this relationship with Jerry Riggs started. And he had a really interesting answer. Now, I don't want to tell the whole story here. Instead, I will play that clip at the end of this video so we can stay on task here with the review. But I do just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to Elliot Goldberg and his podcast, Sonic Impact, for bringing me on to ask that question. I would highly recommend you check out the full interview with Don because Elliot got him talking about some really fascinating topics. So that's one that's absolutely worth your time. All right, let's wrap up this review here. After Radar Rider, they played If I'd Been the One, which, man, that song should be as big as Hold On Loosely and Caught Up in You. That is a killer track. And I wish it was on the radio as much as some of their other songs. On some days, I might tell you that's their best song. So it was really cool to hear that as well. Following that was a fan favorite, Fantasy Girl. I noticed a lot of people stood up for Fantasy Girl, particularly guys who were there with their wives. And you know what? That was pretty sweet. It was very wholesome. Then they did a cover of Good Times by the Easy Beats, which is a song I think they just enjoy playing live. I'm not familiar with that song outside of seeing 38 Special play it, but that's a good track. And then, of course, they closed their set with one of their big hits, Caught Up in You. The encore this time was Chain Lightning and Hold On Loosely. I don't believe they played Chain Lightning when I saw them last year, but they did play Chain Lightning when I saw them all the way back in 2011 at the Washington County Fair. That is a badass rocker, and following it with perhaps their most famous song, Hold On Loosely, it's the perfect way to end a show. 38 Special is really good at presenting their catalog. As someone who goes to a lot of concerts, I have my opinions about how bands present themselves. And as far as my tastes and my preferences, I love how 38 Special does their shows. And that's why I will not skip them again anytime they're around in the future. I don't know how many years they have left because I don't know how many years any classic rock band has left at this point, but they show no signs of slowing down. Don Barnes sounds fantastic. The band has a lot of good energy on stage, and the catalog is strong. Definitely underrated. You know, most people only know the 3 songs, Rockin' Into the Night, Caught Up in You, and Hold On Loosely. Well, that next level of songs that they have are tracks that should be as famous as those 3. Back Where You Belong, If I Had Been the One, Second Chance, Fantasy Girl. These are all killer tracks. So if you are merely a casual fan of 38 Special, I would really recommend you still go see them so you can get exposed to these other great songs in this catalog. And also the new songs they played were really impressive. Their leadoff single, All I Haven't Said, that is one you should check out. That is one that shows that these guys still have gas in the tank. They still have something to deliver. And I'm looking forward to listening to that new album properly. So to conclude, I would say 38 Special is one of the best classic rock bands touring today. They're just an excellent band that I really recommend you go see them if you get a chance. But with that, I will just say thank you very much for watching this review. Please check out some of the other reviews I've done on this channel. If you're a fan of classic rock, I guarantee that I've talked about a different classic rock band or artist that you're a fan of. And if you are that fan of classic rock, please check out the podcast I do. It's all about classic rock. And we've had a lot of great guests on this year, and we have more fun stuff coming up down the road. So please stay tuned for that. And now I will play the clip from the Sonic Impact interview with Don Barnes, in which I got to ask Don a question about Jerry Riggs. So please enjoy that. Otherwise, thanks again for watching. Definitely go see 38 Special if you can. And keep rocking.
Let's see, another one from Play That Podcast. I saw 38 Special last year in concert. They were fantastic. As a fan of the heavy metal soundtrack, I'm very happy to see they added guitarist Jerry Riggs to the lineup. Yeah. You talk about how Jerry came to join the band. I'm bringing on the gentleman who asked that. Who he is. So he asked the question. I didn't see bringing me on, but he wanted to ask.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Elliot. Thanks so much for bringing me on. My name's Joe Kay. I host a podcast called Play That Rock and Roll. I just wanted to say thanks for asking my question, and Don, thanks for doing this. I've really enjoyed watching this today.
Yeah,
But yeah,
Joe,
I saw you guys last year, and you absolutely rocked it. And I don't know if you can see behind me, but I got the heavy metal soundtrack, and I love that
Oh,
Jerry's
yeah,
in the
yeah,
band. So
Jerry's
that
a
was
great
that was
guy.
just my question.
Thanks,
Great,
Joe. I
thank
appreciate it. Yeah, Jerry, he's from Knoxville, Tennessee, and he's just a virtuoso guitarist. And we always were friends with him through the years. And he had, and I'll tell you a funny story of kind of a sad story. He was on his way. He had done the heavy metal soundtrack, he had a couple of albums out, Riggs, the band Riggs, and he had a baby boy, was born with a heart defect, and the boy was going to need several surgeries through his life. That's major surgeries, and Jerry, this is the kind of man he is. That's why I love him to death. He turned his back on his career and he went to work for the post office because he knew he would get good benefits and good insurance. And he delivered mail for 23 years. Jerry did. And his son got those surgeries and went, his son's about 24 now, perfectly fine, but he had to have bypasses, had all kind of, heart surgery. And Jerry just celebrated his birthday. I said, man, that means so much to me, for you as a man to do that, to turn your back on the dream and take care of your boy like that. So,
Oh, thank you, Joe, for that question. Really appreciate it.
I got to tell you, the rest of it's pretty funny. So when I called him, he said, he picked the phone. Don Barnes, what are you doing? I'd played some personal appearances with Jerry. He was in the backup band. And Barry Dunaway, also our bassist, he was also in the backup band. So I called him whenever the opening came up, and I called him and he said, what are you doing? I said, Jerry, you still delivering mail? And he said, yeah, I'm still out there. I mean, literally driving the little truck going mailbox to mailbox, And I said, you ever thought about a early retirement? He said, I could. I said, why don't you come out here and play with all us old guys out here? We'll have a good time,
Oh, nice.
And so the other part of the story is that he had to put his notice in that he was going to retire in January because the new year was coming around and we needed to rehearse and all that. And they had a retirement party for him. Now, everybody on that dock, everybody in the post office, no one knew he even played guitar. He'd put his hair up under his hat and go deliver mail and go home, so they didn't know. And so at his retirement party, they said, so Jerry, now that you're retired, what do you plan on doing? I mean, you play golf or anything? What are you going to do? And he said, well, actually, I'm going to go play with 38 Special. And the guy said, no, you're not.
Oh, that's amazing.
They had no idea he even played guitar, but he dazzles them every night. Jerry does a great job.